Thank you. So today's webinar is really a review of what we've been doing as part of the SEND Centres for Excellence in SEND over the past year. I'm sure a number of you probably already are aware that there are 3 centres, the curriculum centre, which is led by Derby College, the community focus centre, which is led by Norwich, and the people focus centre, which is led by Weston. But actually there's quite a lot of overlap, and hence why we're doing today's joint webinar, because a number of the work streams link together. What we're going to run through today is a review of year 1 and what we've done to date in consultation with a number of you, and what's next, what's planned for phase 2. But what we'd really like you to do is to get involved, use the chat function, because as you'll hear throughout today's webinar, you know, we're at the beginning of planning year 2, and we want to deepen our work, a collaborative work with other FE and providers and organisations across the UK. So we'd really like to hear from you what you'd like to see next, if there's any gaps in what we're doing that you think we need to bridge, and what you can bring in terms of best practice and expertise, and how we can work with you. Next slide, please, Elaine. So in terms of the Education Training Foundation, as a number of you will already be aware, they are the organisation that are funding the SEND Centre for Excellence work. They are a workforce development body focused on the FE and training sector, and they commission and support CPD and development of work in the sector that's also funded by the Department for Education. On this slide here, we've just put a number of links for you in terms of some of the work that's already happened, the SEND Centre for Excellence Gateway. There's lots of resources and information on there, and actually recordings from previous webinars and resources that each of the centres, as well as lots of other organisations, have developed. And just to say that during the next phase of the SEND Centres for Excellence, there'll be an employability focus, which is new for this second phase. Next slide, please. So in terms of the SEND centres, there's 3 key activities for each. There's a leadership hub, which is a strategic discussion forum and sort of resource production at each of the centres, that's led by each of the principals of those colleges. Sitting under that is the communities of practice, where we've got lots of practitioners involved in terms of what they're doing to support the SEND agenda, sharing best practice and linking up and making sure that where there's useful resources that are being produced by other organisations, that we're sharing that and making sure that people are aware of lots of different resources available to them. And as I've just mentioned, the third part of the new SEND Centre for Excellence is the Employability Hub. Elaine, next slide, please. So each of the 3 centres are going to give you a quick, brief overview of year 1. And Elaine and Sarah, I wonder if you can introduce yourselves as you start your segment, so that everyone knows when we're moving on to each of the 3 centres updates. So I'll start with the Weston College SEND Centre for Excellence. As I've already mentioned, our focus is people. So a lot of our engagement activities and our work and our resources are based on supporting both our learners with SEND, but also staff, practitioners, and people who interact and work with SEND learners. That diagram just illustrates the 3 core elements of our SEND Centre for Excellence. The leadership hub, so as I said, that's engaging with FE leaders, key stakeholders, the prison education sector under this new employability hub. the community of practice, which is engaging with managers, FE practitioners, strategic partners such as DWP, the NHS, our local authorities and the schools in our area. And then the third section, that employability hub, is new for this second phase, and each of our centres are focused on a particular geographic area. So for Weston, we're focused on the Southwest, Southeast and London. And our kind of key links there will be with people like the DWP, the FE sector and prisons. Next slide, please. So I just thought it'd be useful to kind of, in a way, illustrate the core components of our SEND Centre for Excellence in year one. It's been very much around communicating, collaborating, supporting and equipping each other with information, advice, guidance, resources to help everybody to develop what they're doing, including ourselves. So although we're a SEND centre, obviously we've got a lot that we can learn from others, and part of that, you know, the whole communities of practice is about sharing that best practice. So the key areas there, as you can see under year one's activities, we've developed a day in the life of SEND toolkit, and actually had events at the college where we welcomed over 90 people in to look at our sensory learning base, the autism centre, to hear from our practitioners about specific parts of what they're doing to support SEND learners. We've also developed an inclusive organisation and disability confident toolkit. There's lots of work around understanding autism. We've actually got an online course that's running on that, and I think 85% of the delegates for that course are from the FE sector, which is fantastic. It just shows that real upscaling of understanding and skills across not just SEND teams, but other teams within colleges across the UK. A huge part of what we've been doing has been around mental health, anxiety and well-being. And obviously COVID-19 has really heightened that work. And you know, to be honest with you, a lot of the work in the coming months is around that health, mental health and well-being and anxiety. Something I'll come on to mention in a while, we've also developed a specialist practitioner model for apprenticeship, or we're developing it, and we'd love to hear from those of you who would be interested in joining with that piece of work and really creating something that really helps people with that level 5 learning, with individual kind of programs of areas of specialism for SEND departments across the UK. We've also talked about 3D tours. We've got a lot of interactive tours on our website to help learners to familiarise themselves with the college environment prior to coming in. And as I've said, engaging with SEND learners remotely during COVID has been a big piece of our work, and we've run a number of webinars on that. Next slide, please. So I won't go into too much detail about this because I know Sam has already spoken to a lot of you about it previously. There's lots of information on other webinars that we can share with you. But just to say that Weston College has been on a journey for a long time in terms of its transformational approach to SEND. And actually, although this slide shows from 2016, the journey that we've been on started well before that, with the joining of our principal back in 2001. So it's been a long journey, and it's not one that can happen overnight, but actually we've developed a really deep understanding of specialist areas and specialist support that's required, bringing in colleagues from other organisations and specialists to help us develop that transformational approach. And our ethos is very much around joining different colleagues together, making sure we have the right skills in our own teams so that they can support our learners, working through partnership to deliver impact both at a local, regional and national level, but also innovation in what we do. And I think that's really come to a head with COVID-19. We've had to adapt everything we've done. There's been a complete digital transformation, which I'm sure a lot of you have been through the same journey, but that's been really challenging for a number of our SEND learners. But interestingly, there's been some really positives to come out of that in terms of them embracing that new way of engaging with their tutors and support workers. Next slide, please. So in terms of our ingredients to success so far, obviously there's been a big piece around empowering our staff to feel confident and comfortable to support learners with their mental health and SEND needs. At a time where there's been financial constraints, we've really had to think outside of the box in terms of how we can add capacity and support for our learners, but also our own staff to make sure that they're equipped to support people as well. We've had a lot of cross-college events, and there you can see on that slide the Body and Mind logo. That basically is an initiative which includes human resource support, inclusive practice and mental health, sports and enrichment activities, and welfare and pastoral support. And as I've said, that's for our staff and students. So, you know, there's lots going on in the college, and I'll share some examples in a little while. But I think really one of the key points on that slide to highlight is about that engagement and collaboration with local services. We've worked really closely with our local authority to understand, you know, the funding and what the needs are, and to really adapt our approach to meet that. And obviously through the SEND Centre, that collaboration is widening, and you know we've started to hear from lots of you around, you know, your own funding landscapes and your own challenges and what you've done to innovate and to think differently in order to support learners with SEND, and that's what we would really love to develop further, is that collaboration and sharing of best practice, and really thinking outside the box in terms of how we can address maybe some of the issues in the sector. Next slide, please. So as I've said on the previous slide that had the round circles, a part of what we've been doing is around training and development, and that's been to a lot of FE colleges across the UK and colleagues. Also our own teams have been trained and developed during furlough, and also a number of employers have taken up training and development so that they can understand customers and learners, and also staff, their own staff that may have a SEN requirement but haven't ever been diagnosed, or it hasn't been picked up. In terms of the distance learning, it was been the 5th most visited page on our website since lockdown on the 23rd of March, and as you can see there, we've had 7,000 page sessions and 674 enrolments. I won't labour on this slide too much, but I just have highlighted all of those courses that link to mental health and well-being, reducing anxiety. So that infection control COVID-19 course has been really popular, and I think that's a really positive picture there, that actually some of the key courses that are being searched for and looked at are around understanding learning difficulties and mental health problems and behavioural problems. You know, I think that just shows a real desire by a number of sectors to really support people. Next slide, please, Elaine. And this slide is just to show you the top 6 of those training courses out of the 674 enrolments. As you can see there, awareness of mental health problems, understanding and working with people with mental health problems, understanding behaviour that challenges, and also understanding specific learning difficulties are feature in that top 6. As I've said, we're really encouraged by that, because I think not only do we need to support our learners in our own college environments, but as those learners either enter into supported internships or apprenticeships or into the world of work, if employers don't understand those additional needs that people might have, then you know that can be really a barrier to learners being successful in the world of work. And just an interesting a statistic that's been, a number of you probably have already seen it, that's been bandied about recently. If the economic impact of COVID-19 is similar to that of the 2008 recession, it is anticipated that another 500,000 people will have mental health issues over the next year. So, you know, I just think it's so important that organisations and the FE sector really do understand that piece. Next slide, please, Elaine. And this slide is just to show you that as well as sharing best practice training resources of our own, we use the SEND Centre to also distribute information and reports and research that link to the people strand of the centre. So in the middle there, I'm sure a number of you might have already picked this up through social media. It's been shared widely over the last week, but Mind UK released a report last Wednesday on the mental health emergency in response to the coronavirus pandemic. And actually it is quite a stark read, and I would recommend everybody taking a look at that. There's some really interesting facts and figures and top tips really in terms of what people might be able to do to support people going forward. And the Wednesday working lunches is something that our business growth team have been running since the lockdown, and that's engaging with a whole range of strategic partners in the area, giving advice and information, and also signposting people to other support that's available. And we've actually run a couple of webinars linked to the SEND Centre through that forum as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that another part of the SEND Centre work under year one has been around sharing best practice around tools and resources that we use as an organisation, and I've put some of them on the screen there. That isn't a full list. We've got a directory of services that each of our learners and staff members have access to, and that not only has information about the services that we have as an organisation, but it has a whole list of websites that people can go to. One of them on the screen there that I just wanted to highlight in particular is Big White Wall. That's an online portal that's available 365 days a year, 24/7, and it's supported by a trained team of counsellors. So all of our staff and our learners and our partners have access to that. It's a service that we've brought in so that when our welfare teams aren't available, we're confident that people have a support available to them. And on there you can post information about either anything that you're feeling or anything that you're experiencing, but also there's really useful links to other support services available to you. And the counsellors monitor any of the chat on that forum, so if anything is posted that's of concern, they step right in. So again, if it's at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, and one of our learners posts something that's distressing, then they will step straight in. So again, it just gives us that confidence that I mean, obviously we had this prior to COVID-19, but at the moment it's become even more important. Next slide, please. And I mentioned earlier about kind of keeping in contact with our learners, and in particular our SEN learners. We've used a lot of technology during lockdown to make sure that we're continuing to engage with learners on a daily basis. I've put some examples there, and I'm sure a lot of you have already used some of the technologies available, but obviously things like Zoom and sort of online guest lectures and sessions for learners. As I've mentioned, Big White Wall and Couth, which are online support services, but also our welfare team have been running online PE sessions and fitness sessions, and just encouraging people to keep in touch has been a big part of how we've helped people through lockdown. And actually, as we start to move back into a blended approach to delivery. I think even in September, only 50% of our learners will be back on site. We've actually learned an awful lot about how technologies and how different tools and forums can help us support our learners and keep them engaged. And actually, that's been a real positive to come out of a quite awful situation. And we'd love to hear from you in terms of what you've been doing, and which tools and techniques you've found useful as well. We did run a webinar on this a little while ago, and we can share the link with you on that. But please let us know what you've been doing, because I think the more we share, the more we can really support learners as they transition back into the college environment. Next slide, please. One of the other things I mentioned on the early slide that we've been working on in year one of the SEND Centre is about developing SEND professionalism. And Sam, who's our head of faculty, unfortunately hasn't been able to join us today due to IT problems, but she's been sort of spearheading a level 5 apprenticeship framework, which will help to upskill staff in the FE sector. And it's an opportunity to really define the roles and specialise in SEND and learning support, and give motivational career structure to SEND, which maybe hasn't been there previously, and really make it a career of choice. Obviously the key part of that is about kind of continuing to develop your staff and their knowledge and their behaviours and their practice, and also making sure that we meet employer recruitment needs. And a number of you probably have already seen the announcement around traineeships, and obviously the supported internships lead into traineeships and apprenticeships. I think we're going to see more and more of that in the press and on the agenda over the coming weeks. And what we need to make sure we do for our SEND learners is that we're meeting that employer need in terms of their recruitment going forward. The other benefits of developing the apprenticeship framework around SEND professionalism is, growing our own and succession planning. We've got a fantastic team at Weston, and we want to retain our staff and keep them with us, not least because our SEND learners have a really strong relationship with those staff, and if you lose them, that can really sort of create problems for your SEND learners. So by creating that professional career structure, we're hoping that we will retain staff and see them develop within our own organisation. Next slide, please. Actually, I've probably covered quite a bit on the previous slide here, but our aims for developing that apprenticeship model are to deliver outstanding outcomes for our LDD learners, to take responsibility for the curriculum development and innovations, to inspire, support and develop an inclusive practice, to create that continual professional development piece for our inclusive practice faculty. But also we've got practitioners that are based across our whole of our college. So for example, we've got practitioners in our apprenticeship team and in our work experience team and in some of our other faculties. And actually, if we can create a continual development for them, we ensure that inclusive practice is represented across the organisation, not just in the inclusive practice department. And obviously have an impact positively on the whole college approach to SEND. We are lucky that from leadership down, SEND is high on the agenda, but the more we professionalise SEND within the organisation and create that development pathway for SEND practitioners, the more we'll make sure it's embedded across our whole organisation. And what we'd really like to do is to work with a number of you in developing that apprenticeship model and the content and shaping what that will look for the sector. Next slide, please. I think this might be the last one for me. Just to say, and I've mentioned it throughout, but in terms of phase 2 of the SEND Centre for Excellence, there's a number of activities that we'd really love to work with you on. Obviously, there's the Leadership Hub. Dr. Paul Phillips is already engaging with the Department of Education, the FE Commissioner, a number of CEOs and principals, and we really want to see that develop further. So if your principal isn't currently engaged in the Leadership Hub around people and would like to be, please let us know so that we can make those connections. As I've mentioned, what we want to do in the second phase is to develop topic focused working groups. So obviously we've done a lot of webinars which is about information sharing, and we'll continue to do those, but we now want to kind of do a bit more of a deep dive into specific topics. So for example, mental health and well-being, that apprenticeship model for SEND practitioners, and a day in the life of SEND, ADHD. There's a number of things that we really want to start drilling down and actually really sharing practice thoughts and developing toolkits and resources that are available to everybody to use. So if there's anything in particular that you would like to be involved in, or you have a key specialism in, please let us know, because we will be setting up those focus groups over the coming weeks, probably to start in September in the new academic year. And just to say that we will continue running webinars and events and developing content, all of which will be posted on the ETF website. But whenever we've run something, we'll send out an email so that you've got the latest news and links. Thank you. I think that might be.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Sarah LeGood. I'm the Director of Inclusion at Derby College Group. We've delivered alongside Weston and Norwich for the past year in the first year of our Centre for Excellence. Mine will be a whistle-stop tour of what we've done in year one, because what I'm most interested in is what we're going to be doing, working alongside you in year two. I don't know whether anybody saw, but the Office for National Statistics released some data last week, and I'm sure, like me, you're all lulling yourself to sleep by reading those facts and figures that keep us all in jobs around inclusion. So I'm going to read you one point that they released, which I think is really pertinent and very specific around the work that we're all doing for our most highly vulnerable young people. After adjusting for region, population density, socio-demographic and household characteristics, the relative difference in mortality rates between those that are limited a lot by disability and those that are not disabled was 2.4 times higher for females and 1.9 times higher for males. So the people that we work with every day with disability or inclusion needs are more likely to die of COVID than anybody else that could be coming through our doors in September. So I think for me, part of our mission is around enabling everyone and around using real attribute-based positives to make sure that we're able to support our young people, and that intention will remain. So the work that we've done is very much around responding to you as individuals, as individual organisations, as individual leadership teams, and the idea is that whatever we work with you on, we have some kind of off-the-shelf stuff that we can offer, but that we would try and work with you individually to make sure that you're at the kind of focus, and that whatever we do with you meets your specific quality improvement planning or self-assessment or post-inspection action planning needs. Do you want to take us to the next slide, Elaine? Thank you ever so much. So Mandy, along with Corianne and Dr. Paul, leads specific activities around what the curriculum needs to look like and what, sorry, I'm distracted by the chat because things keep popping up. So Mandy leads very specifically around the strategic intent in an organisation. She's drafted 20 strategic questions, which we share with leaders from across the sector to look at whether they are red, amber or green in their strategic intent around inclusive practice. About 6 years ago, we made quite deliberate decisions. So at Derby, we don't tend to use SEND as a description, and we don't use LLDD or learning difficulty disability. All of those descriptions are based in a medical model or a medical diagnosis, and everything we do, we work from the social model of disability, and we use that as one of the key levers to drive change at a senior leadership level, as well as at an operational and practitioner level, whether it's support staff, parents and carers, whether it's teachers, assessors, anybody really. We really do try and start off from the perspective that people know and understand what the social model is, and it then changes or supports that change in thinking away from the passive need for support to the developmental need for resilience and progression, so young people achieving and moving on. Will you click for me please, Elaine? and again, and again. Just keep going until this slide's complete. Thank you. So we offer a range, oh, just nip, can you nip back to, sorry. So we offer a range of face-to-face and virtual support. The stuff that we've had most positive reflection on, or most positive impact this year, has been the work around appreciative inquiry, which has been done with Anita Devi, who's a SEND sector specialist in schools, and it's looking at basically looking at reviewing or curriculum mapping, provision mapping, and then making sure that that enables you to look at what your quality improvement focus needs to be for the coming year. We've built a resource which is the Personalised Study Programme Builder, which you can see at the bottom, and it's like a flick book of curriculum. So you flick over and you can build specific individualised curriculum as you go. And then we've done quite a lot of face-to-face workshops about curriculum flexibility and its implementation. Some of that's been around accredited or non-accredited decisions around RAPA. Some of it's been around the accessibility of a variety of Microsoft tools, and we're a Microsoft demonstrator college. And some of it's just been around working with you to work out what you know and what you don't know and what we can share with you. And then when you share that back with us, so that's been a huge positive for us. Do you want to just flick one for me, Elaine? Our current focus, as with everybody, and particularly in light of the Office for National Statistics data, is how we are going to support students to recover. So these are the 5 models of learning that we're implementing as an organisation, and we are just developing a suite of support or inclusion strategies that sit alongside each of these models. I won't go into it in great detail, but the idea is that we've continued, like every other provider, to support remotely, and we are planning remote enrolment, and so we've got no intention of going back to a full-time face-to-face model in September, because our venues, our sites won't support that. So we are looking at this and updating it as we go. I think my next slide, please, Elaine. So I think I'm going to pose you a couple of questions, and whether you want to answer them at the end when we actually are able to chat, or whether you want to put responses in the chat, are: what is your SEND curriculum focus for the coming year, and what can we do to support you to achieve that? It's about aspiration. So we've got lots of kind of curriculum development experience around implementing social pedagogy at the heart of that work, looking at the attribute-based stuff, sharing good practice about how students are able to track or co-create their support plans and share those with teachers and support staff, so that they don't have to share their story again and again and again. We are still in development around our use of ProMonitor, and I'm really proud of the work that we've done on that. So we've got lots and lots and lots of stuff that we can happily share, but we will always ask you to reciprocate and share back with us. So if you've got something that we're working on, we'd really, really welcome the opportunity to do that. Next one, Elaine, I think that's me done.
Yes, so it's over to me now. Hello everyone, I'm Elaine from City College Norwich, and our focus for the SEND Centres for Excellence has been around community. That breaks down into 3 areas: working with employers, parents, and our community as a whole. So let me tell you what we've been doing over the last year. Well, the biggest thing, well, actually not the biggest thing, one of the things that I think has been really important to highlight is signposting all of the resources and courses that's currently on the ETF website. And I think if you look at the links that were shared earlier on with Jane, right at the very beginning, please do make good use of those. There's absolutely stacks of resources out there. So we've spent a fair amount of time when we've been working with you is signposting. It's really important to be able to share what we do, but also to know that there is stacks of resources out there. And I'm hoping from today, listening to you guys and hopefully from your feedback, that we'll be able to work effectively together. So for us, when we're thinking about the leadership hub and the support, our focus has been a strategy in creating a culture of excellence. And so we're all of us will have a framework of a vision and a culture which aids inclusion. But for us at the college, we created creative excellence, which was from a sort of design thinking model, and from that came our ways of working. We introduced this several years ago. That really works very well, and we follow that. That's everything that we do. Some people say it's a cult rather than a culture, but actually it works really well, and our students follow our ways of working as well. That really does aid an inclusive culture. So when we're working with employers, this is the work that we've been doing over the last year with you, the sector. I have to say, I had three main themes that I was working on with employers, parents and community. I had no idea that this would be the greatest area, and people kept saying to me, please put on more webinars and please share the resources. So we have our approach to working with employers. Mainly this started off with working with apprentices and employers of apprentices to engage and look at our inclusive approach to recruitment and having workplace mentors, etc. And as a result of that, we have been really successful running an inclusive approach to recruitment for our employers, and devised a toolkit a few years ago and updated that for the SEND Centres for Excellence, which you can see there on the right hand side. We also created a digital guide that we have on our website, and we signpost our employers to that so that they can look at different types of disability, how it affects a young person, and how, more importantly, the employer can support the young person apprentice in the workplace. The FE engagement, as I say, has been really strong in this area, and you've given me really nice feedback. And as practitioners, I'm sure Weston and Derby will agree, it's really good to get feedback to understand if we're on the right track, and I hope you'll do that with us today. The other area of work that I've been looking at is been working with parents and carers in raising aspirations. And if you're in the SEND department, you know that sometimes it's really tricky raising those aspirations and thinking about the young person's future. And so we created a toolkit guide, and that was really, the toolkit came out of listening to you, the sector, actually wanting something physical and tangible to give to employers, to give to our parents and carers. So we pulled together all our resources and created this toolkit. So that was a real success as well. My final area of work for last year was quite interesting. It wasn't something that I was going to focus on initially, because we were going to look at our award-winning community work, but actually talking to you throughout the year. And this is why it's really important with the Centres for Excellence that we do take feedback, and we do adapt and listen to what the sector needs. And at the time, the feedback that I got for last year was actually we wanted to look at prevent fundamental British values and supporting the employer with that, and how we took that approach. So I shared last year all of our resources, quite a lot of resources around training our students and updating our students with fundamental British values, and looking at different types of disability, etc., etc. And then we created a toolkit as well. So currently, Norwich's focus is a real plan and working with employers, and a great focus of thinking about getting our learners back into the workplace. For those that existing supported interns or apprentices needing to get back into the workplace, and then also thinking about engaging with new employers. What we do when we're talking currently in webinars, and I won't click through all of these, I'm just showing them just like this, is actually, first off, we need to understand what employers really want, and a good dose of knowledge and understanding. I would say when you're looking at that percentage, it's really a high percentage that they just need to understand the practical adjustments, any additional support that's required. They need to know about learning disability because they have a lack of experience. And so the critical part is they're not looking at a young person's attributes in respect of, they want to actually have the support from us to talk about the knowledge and understanding of disability. And so they're looking to us as a training provider to help and support them. So key findings and recommendations that came out of that report that I've just showed you, and our experience from Disability UK, the 4 key findings of that was around actually employers wanted to know about how to support young people with recruitment and selection and to have different approaches. They wanted to have more information when they were looking at that transparent information, and when you're looking at that about pastoral support, how to put reasonable adjustments in place, and any funding guidance and support that they would need to be able to implement that. But most importantly, as I've noted here before, is the education and training to improve that so the employers have that, that knowledge. So that's what we've been focusing on this year. As well as the big COVID-19 issue, and talking to employers about actually the different approaches and supporting them to think about the opportunities and how we take that forward. So that's been our big focus these coming months. Top tips and success for during this time is that we have been in contact with our employers, and we've been urging our supported interns and our apprentices to be in contact with our employers even if they may be furloughed, and to make sure that that's that communication, understanding that moving forward and even now that there needs to be a balance from any work that's been set at home, which there have been for many of our apprentices, but actually just moving forward what that looks like, and moving forward with approaches to develop knowledge and skills and behaviours for the workplace, which brings me on to our latest toolkit, is around actually being really clear with communication about the different types of disability, how it affects a young person and how you can help. And in the workplace, that's going to be really essential for employers, we feel, to understand and support young people getting back into work, when you're understanding the rules and regulations of designated work areas, to be able to understand the rules around infection control. And if you understand the disability, if the employer appreciates that, then you've got a greater success. And so that toolkit, we feel, is really helpful. We've also got within the toolkits, as you can see on the screen, 1 through to 9. That's picked up from our version 1, and those are our most popular ones with employers, and so we've carried those through into this current toolkit. What's our focus moving forward? Well, I've got this focus, but I'd be very interested in hearing from you if there's anything else that you need from me when I'm thinking about working with employers and the community. So we've had a big focus on business case for employers, looking at equality, diversity, inclusion, and how to engage employers effectively, and that knowledge and understanding that I've just spoken about. Coming up quite soon, we've got our supported internship model, but authentic inclusion for employers and what that really looks like for employers. And then in the autumn term, a date not set just yet, because I should think September will be extremely busy for us all. But when things settle down, hopefully when we're looking at October onwards, I'm going to be sharing our best practice of our supported employment employment agency and how we get people into sustained employment. So be interested to hear from you if there's anything else that you want to work with me on, or with any of the other 3 centres. But I'll move on to the next slide.
Oh, just a really quick one from me. It's Jane at Weston. Just to let you know, in terms of what's coming up for our centre, we've got, we're very fortunate to be welcoming Nick Elston to deliver a webinar on the 15th of July. For those of you who came to the mental health conference on the 5th of March, you'll know that Nick delivers really impactful sessions, and we're delighted to have him back for this virtual session. And we've got one more webinar before the break in the summer. I think that's the 29th of July. And then, as I've mentioned previously, once we've sort of started in September again, we'll have a number of webinars, but we then also want to create some focus groups to really drill down into other areas of work. So we'd love to hear from you. That's it for me for now. Thank you.
So what's coming up in Derby? So Sarah might come in a moment. I'm hoping she will.
I was just struggling to unmute, dear. I'm here now. I'm in now. I'm just recapping on what I said previously, really. We'll continue the things that we've had positive feedback on. We're looking at further developments around the individual and the team coaching model. I think Elaine mentioned that they use a model of design thinking, which all 3 of the colleges coincidentally use. So we've got some really specific stuff around design thinking. It's a really simple 5-stage strategy in working on change. And actually what it's done for us is it's allowed us to keep the change at the focus of everything we do. So we never stop changing what we do around responding to students' needs. So it's been really, really fundamental for us. So we can come out and train you as design thinking trainers, and Mandy, our CEO, will come out and do a senior leadership session around what design thinking is and how you can employ it if it would be useful in your organisations. And then other than that, it will be to continue to share what we've already done and then come out to you as a sector and ask you for your support in what we are developing. It genuinely is reciprocal, and the community of practice work that we've started has been really useful for us already. So it's just, I think, the kind of method of sharing practice in the sector, and it's research based. So thank you very much to everybody who's engaged. That's it from me, Elaine.
So that's it as far as what we've done so far and what our focus is now for 2021. I'm going to just stop the recording